Hi, Harry. Thank you so much for being here with me today on Unfounded. Our topic is race and gender and investing. As you know, we have three questions to constrain us around this topic. One that looks to the past, one that looks to the present, and one that leans into the future. And as you also know, we gave each other a sneak peek into questions 1 and 2 about the past and the present, but question 3, the one about the future, that's the wild card. And turned out to be my favorite part of this whole endeavor. And so thank you so much for being part of this with me today. You also know there are no formal bios on this show. So anyone listening or watching who wants to learn a little more about Harry's incredible experience as an entrepreneur, as an ecosystem champion, and as an investor, you can check more out in the show notes. But what I've done in lieu of bios is I've asked Harry to think of, to deliver 3 words that he can use to introduce himself, and only 3 words. So Harry, let her rip, 3 words.
Husband, father, entrepreneur.
I mean, you can't go wrong when you play it straight. I don't know that much about you. We've only been friends for a while, but you are those things. So that is a true story. So, well, thank you so much. I just want to say that when I think about ecosystem champions, you always come to mind in the sense that when I first started spending time in that part of the country, you were everywhere all the time and so generous with your time. And I think those words get thrown around a lot, but through my journeys, I'm so impressed with how you advocate and really roll up your sleeves and do work and really put your heart where your mouth is. And I've really admired watching that unfold over the years. And so as a consequence, I can't think of anybody I'd rather have this quick conversation today than you. So thank you again sincerely for taking time to be here. You good to go? You ready?
I'm good to go. Thank you for having me. I'm pumped.
Thanks so much. Yeah. All right. We just went in the time machine, Harry. We're looking to the past now. So exemplars in heroes in startup culture are so beloved, and they're so deeply embedded in all kinds of entrepreneurship education, informal and formal. Meanwhile, the stories of Black entrepreneurs have been just absent, just untold, certainly in the mainstream media and mainstream storytelling. How did that affect your journey, and how does it inform the work that you do today?
Yeah, it's definitely impacted my journey. And when I learned about Booker T. Washington as a young student, and this is a person who was kind of controversial, but his main point or his area of focus was Black progress through education and entrepreneurship. And that also pushed me, flung me on my journey, and helped me decide on which college I wanted to go to, because they had an African American Studies program and I wanted to learn more. And today, what I do is I teach. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, and I also support entrepreneurs. And so it's been a big part of my journey and what I am today.
I set this up. I told myself I wouldn't respond to the answers just to keep it tight. It's like killing me. I'm like 8 episodes in, and I want each question to be its own show. I think I think you're going to help tell a new generation of stories, and that I hope in the future we won't have to ask that question again. So, all right, we're in the time machine. I'm looking backwards. What's your question?
So, who would you want to have dinner with from any female founder in history?
So I'm so glad I had a sneak peek at this, because I think I would have taken me a minute. And I really, so one of the challenges that I had when I was coming up as an entrepreneur is I had role model. I had mentors, but not role models. Because at the time there just weren't many women. I started out in life sciences when there were no women. I went into government when there weren't that many women. I went into entrepreneurship when there were no women founders. And I went into investing when there were no women fund managers. So I've had incredible mentors, but I haven't had role models. So I thought a lot about who my role models were. And a lot of them were historical figures. So when people ask me, who are your role models? It's not some contemporary person. It's usually a historical figure. And I think I really thought about this. I would love to have dinner with Flannery O'Connor. And I think of her as a literary entrepreneur. It's not a test. Most people are not familiar with her work. She was an author that wrote. She was in the South. She wrote in the late 1940s and early 1950s. And the reason why she was so impactful to me is I discovered her writing when I was probably 19 or 20, and she writes really powerful stories about transcendence and grace, but through the lens of very ugly, traumatic characters. There's nothing about her stories that are pretty. And as a woman reading literature and reading women authors, it was the first time I read a woman who wrote ugly, unapologetically. She didn't transform the ugly to pretty at the end of the story. The ugly just stayed ugly, and then the ugly just resolved in many ways that showed tremendous grace and transcendence. But it was the opposite of Disney, right? It wasn't like Mary Shelley ugly, like, character, like horror. It was just the realities of human experience and the ugliness of us all through, like, when we see our flaws as ugly. And as a person who was always been interested in storytelling and believes that storytelling is probably the most important thing in entrepreneurship in general, I think knowing at 19 that stories could be ugly and that people could be ugly and still find transcendence, and that not everybody got transformed into, like, the beautiful people didn't get married at the end of every story, opened a door that allowed me to find a much more robust experience professionally, and then I also personally. So that said, I heard she was cray and she was really sick at the end of her life, and she was all like caught up in her Catholicism. And so it would probably be a disaster. Like, she'd hate me. She'd hate everything about me, I'm sure. But yeah, Flannery O'Connor. So thanks for asking. It's an awesome question. All right, we are now in the present time, walking on terra firma today. So I don't think people realize how much informal training and support entrepreneurs get when they come from communities of privilege. So much of my mentorship support in the C-suite is working with founders who have to learn everything by effort versus osmosis. And I've experienced that myself, but I feel like it's been one of the hardest frontiers to cross when we talk about creating equity. Is how do you compensate for years of missing osmosis when all you have is effort, right? And effort takes time. And so I was just wondering, do you see that in the communities where you're active? And if you do see it, just kind of any thoughts about how we might start to address it at scale?
Yeah. And so the previous question I mentioned, Booker T. Washington, he was actually of the last generation to actually be born a slave. And so and that made me really think. And then I look at today, like, we are, especially the Black community, we are generations behind. And I feel like it's always playing catch up. The whole point is, if you're going to leave a legacy, it's to be leaning forward while reaching back, pulling someone
Yeah.
else behind you. And so today, like, I'm always conscious of that. And how can I not only move forward, but also bring someone or a community with me? And so I think it's a mindset of not just thinking about, just having tunnel vision on your own success, but like, how can I actually help other people around me? How can I solve problems worth solving? And I think when you have that mindset, I think we can do tremendous things. And so I try to incorporate that into my work, and I try to pass it on and pay it forward in other ways, so other people can be influenced, and maybe hopefully they can do that too with their respective communities.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of we need to get more cash, but if you don't support the cash with the capacity, then we're all just gonna people are just gonna stand around and blame the entrepreneurs for being bad entrepreneurs, right? And I see that so much. People just don't realize, like, if you grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, or you went to a college that had a lot of business building training, like so many things, right? That if you just kind of like distance traveled here and you're up, it's all effort, right? Like, thinking about how to, like, really not make that shameful. I feel like in my life it was shameful. I was always trying to bury my past, and I was the first person in my family to graduate college, and I wouldn't tell anybody that. So people always thought I was, because I was, people just assumed I came from privilege, and that I thought that's what I wanted them to do. But I now realize I missed out on so much help because I was like, yeah, no, I got it. And
We
now
shouldn't
I
be
think about,
ashamed
yeah,
of, we shouldn't be ashamed of our own
no,
experiences, and I think it's their teachable moments, that can also be learning opportunities for other people. And
yeah,
if we do realize we come from a place of privilege at any point, I think it's best to talk about it. Don't shelve it, and
yeah.
I think everyone can learn from it.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. Thank you. Okay, question about the present. Lay it on me.
Yeah. So you touched on it a little bit in your question, but I want to know, what is the biggest opportunity to support diverse founders today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an extension of what I was just leaning into there. I mean, there's all kinds of infrastructure and things that we need to do in tandem, right? I think this idea of a single point silver bullet solution that fixes, 200 years of inequity, it's ridiculous, right? There's all, I believe in that progressive thread of all the things we need to do to make this a more just and equal country. But I think in entrepreneurship, I am really nervous about the sort of tsunami of language around, let's just get more people of color and more women to become fund managers. And then let's just do this and do this. And everything's just going to fall together. I do think that there needs to be a deeper reckoning around just the layers of the inequity. And it kind of and I think that informal training is just one of those things. And I think my partner and I have now done 140 companies together. And I can't tell you the difference to, if you come out of a top level school and you have, your mom or your dad is an exec, you just absorb all kinds of things that advance your ability to be compelling and credible in front of the investors that typically look like that. And you have to, I think to not talk about it and address it really does create a lot of pressure for those founders that don't have that, to either tie themselves in knots trying to pretend that they're not who they are, or really just be struggling in a way that is just unfair, right? And so I think that's one of the things that I'm really, especially in this moment, very passionate about, is getting more people to recognize that that giving that informal coaching. It's not to say that sometimes there's not formal advice in it, but just the informal coaching that gives a person a place to feel safe to ask the stupid question, right? Like that they just didn't pick up, like they just hadn't bumped into it. You only know what you know. And I think that's not what accelerators really do. And it's not what investment funds do. And so I've had to recently start to invent new structures for that. So I invented some C-suite management platforms for women founders that just they don't really do that. Accelerators don't really do it. I mean, they do it a little bit, but then they end. And then you're still, you have not learned it all. Like, trust me on that one. And then investment funds, I think, give good advice, but that's not what funds do. Funds aren't life coaches or business coaches usually for their companies. So I'm really excited about taking the C-suite coaching and demystifying it and making it feel less shameful that you need it. Like, because I think that's how it feels. Like, you feel like this guy next to you, like, he doesn't need it because he came from that network of privilege. People assume he worked really hard to get all that knowledge, but it was actually osmosis. And you have to find all the hours in time to read, to study, to learn, and to connect. And yeah, that I want to work on that for the next forever.
Love
for the next forever. That's my timeline. That's my timeline for the next. I'd like to work on that for the next forever. Yeah. So yeah. But thank you for asking. It's a good question.
Of course.
All right, we're back. We're heading in the time machine. We're looking into the future. I thought about this one for a while for you because I don't know. Talking about the future for me is always really difficult. But this was the best I could do in terms of giving you plenty of space to roam here. So you and I are going to bury a time capsule today, and a group of entrepreneurs are going to open it up in 50 years. What would you put in that capsule?
I would put some Bitcoin in a hardware wallet with instructions for whoever opens it. And by then, Bitcoin will be over
like
$1 million.
It'd be like a dinosaur bone.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Oh my
and
God,
whoever opens it, this is your gift. And this is here's wealth for you. Go do whatever you want with it. And it's wealth in a bottle. And I think that would be the biggest gift. And that's something that I wish I would find in a time capsule.
Yeah, sure. I want to find that in my couch. When I clean out my couch later, I want to find some Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. I know again, I'm not supposed to answer the question, but I was having fun thinking about this. I know what I would put in the time capsule, which is not fair because I shouldn't get an extra question, but I'm going to tell. I would take the snapshot stats today of how much investment goes to women and people of color.
Yeah.
And I put a little note on top that says, hey, we think this is changing. And then I would put it in there because 50 years from now, they'd either look at it and be like, wow, that was the dark ages, or they'd look at it and be like, shit, we haven't changed.
Yeah.
Like either way, I'd be like I think it could be really powerful. That's what I was thinking today. I'd be like, because I want it, I want it to be the former, not the latter. I want it to be like a dinosaur bone. But that's
Yeah.
what I would think I would do right now to hold ourselves accountable to that future generations. Snap a line, put it in there, and be like, chew on this, people. Chew on this.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Now unfairly, I'm going to get two future questions. So.
Okay. So we're in the future. And so you're going to be hosting an in-person event, the first in-person event you've hosted since pre-pandemic. Where is that going to be, and who is going to be in attendance?
Yeah, this is awesome. This is a great question because you and I used to go to a lot of events. It's the only reason why we have a relationship is because we would just cross at events, right?
Yep.
I think next event that I'm going to host, I'm going to be a lot more honest about the subterranean reasons why people go to events. The value under the real value under the value, maybe that's advertised on the marquee, right? We know that we don't just go to the events because of the content or the people. We go because either the other folks that we're going to spend time with there, we go because it's at a special location, a place in the country we want to go spend time, or the world. We go there because we want to get away and create space to be creative for ourselves, right? A lot of people go to events to have these space to be creative. I know I always had bursts of creativity when I was traveling. So I would really I would be much more transparent with my attendees about that. And rather than send them bulleted lists of all the new speakers, I would send them notes about the food and how we were going to help you really, really find the people that were going to either give you joy or help you progress. Like I would go and then I'd be like, oh, and meanwhile, yeah, there'll be some content that we know that you kind of don't go to anyway. And when you're there, you're on your phone anyway, or you're just sort of tweeting, pretending. I would just go straight at that and really give people that clean view into what value is here for you. Because I think that's what's going to motivate us to start, getting out of our offices again. I'm not going to go to an event just because it has a great keynote. I'm going to go because I haven't been to Nashville since mid 2019, and I missed the place. And I want to see, and I want to see the ecosystem there. I want to reconnect with that. And I love the way that those people do that, right? Like, or I'm going to go to Venture Atlanta in person, just because like those people throw a good party. Period. I can see the startup pitches on my laptop from the hotel room, which I might do if I'm hungover from the amazing party that they had the night before. And I really do think that a lot of emphasis is going to be on that value below the value. So how are you really making people have meaningful connections? How is it joyful? How is it fun? How is it all the bang? Because I think a lot of us have learned that we did not need to spend so much time on the road, and we probably don't want to do it again. Yeah. So that's it. Well, we've reached the end of our time travel journey together, and I really appreciate you taking time and sharing your thoughts on this. And thanks again for everything that you do and continue to do. And I keep telling stories, get more stories out there. And I'm going to look for that Bitcoin in my couch when I get home, like for sure. So thanks again, Harry.